Hello, today we are going to see if we can run graphical user interface applications in Microsoft Windows Server 2022 Core. So can we install graphical user interface applications in Windows Server Core? Can we install graphical user interface applications using their installer wizards by clicking Next, Next, Next in Windows Server Core 2022? Let's first install Windows Server Core and see what's the difference between Windows Server 2022. So the default option when you install Windows Server 2022, the first option in the list is Windows Server 2022 Standard without desktop experience. So this first option and the third option are Windows Server Core. So this is Windows Server Core, this is Windows Server Core. This is a more classic Windows Server experience that you have used in previous versions of Windows with the Windows Shell, Windows Explorer, and the Windows File Explorer, File Manager, the Windows Start menu, etc. So let's install Windows Server Core. We'll be back once we're further along. The install is pretty fast. Way less software to install, so the installer is considerably faster. The operating system starts considerably faster. There's less Windows services to start. And very importantly, when new Windows security patches and Windows operating system patches appear, such as on Patch Tuesday, on Windows Server Core, there will be less operating system patches that can be installed in Windows Server Core, because the operating system patches correspond to various subsystems. Maybe there's a patch for the scanner subsystem or for the printing subsystem, which are not maybe installed by default in Windows Server Core, so that operating system update does not apply to this operating system. Okay, the local user administrator exists, and we need to set a password. The passwords you entered. Okay, so that was a fast, for a fast moment you could see a small window in the top left side of the desktop. That is the moment where the desktop for the local user administrator has been created, which means the home directory and other configuration files. And then we boot straight into the graphical user interface application cmd.exe. So we're not booted in a text user interface mode. We're not at some virtual terminal, as it were, in Linux, or a fully text user interface. No, this is a graphical user interface, and we have windows in here. The window that we can see running is cmd.exe, elevated as an administrator, and inside the application that's running is named sconfig.cmd. And this is what sconfig.cmd looks like by default. It's a text user interface. It asks for a number starting from 1 to 15. And this can be used in order to configure the Windows server. Very important features of the operating system. And we're going to actually use this sconfig.cmd to do the configuration for the current installation. So domain workgroup is okay. Computer name, let's change that. Windows Server 2022. It asks if I want to restart. Say yes. Let's see how fast it restarts. Okay, we need to center Ctrl-Alt-Delete keyboard combination. Let's go back to full screen. Password for the user administrator. And we're back into the desktop of the local user administrator, back with cmd.exe, the graphical user interface application, and inside sconfig.cmd. The computer name has been changed correctly. We have the option of installing updates, which is option 6, which we should do. And then we can enable RDP protocol, remote desktop protocol server, which we want to do, 7. Enable E. Allow only clients running remote desktop with network level authentication. More secure, 1. Okay. Press enter to continue. We're back at the sconfig.cmd menu. No need to change the network settings. This is a virtual machine. It's using the DHCP by default, which is okay. And from here on, the only option that the only options that remain useful are to install updates, which is 6, and to exit to command line PowerShell, which is 15. We're connected to the Windows Server 2022 core computer using the remote desktop protocol application, and we will exit sconfig because we want to actually start some applications in this operating system. So we choose option 15, which is exit to PowerShell. We continue to have just one application running, a empty desktop, no wallpaper, no start menu, no toolbar, no tray. But we still can start more than one application. Let's see how we do that. So this is the Windows shell PowerShell. Windows has 2 shells, PowerShell and cmd.exe. Let's see how we can switch to cmd. Like this. Now we're inside cmd.exe, but it's still just one window. Let's start a second cmd.exe. Does not work. We're still inside a single window. Let's see if start works. Yes, now we have a second window. Let's see if we can start PowerShell. And now we have 3 windows. Definitely we can have windows in running in Windows Server Core. We can minimize them. We can maximize them. We can make them use half of the screen. There's a familiar title bar, minimize, restore, maximize, close button. There's the title bar icon with its menu. If you click on the icon, or if you right click on the icon, or if you right click anywhere on the title bar, there's no quarter tiling. You cannot make a window use a quarter of the screen, but you can make it use half of the screen. So just let's see how similar is this to a regular desktop operating system such as Windows 11 Pro, for instance. Do we have environment variables here? Yes, we do. Do we have the path.exe environment variable? Yes. .com.exe.bat, similar to Windows 11. Do we have the path environment variable? Yes. Starts with c:\Windows system32. Let's see the content of this directory. Oh, many executables are available. Let's see which ones of these is a graphical user interface application, or let's remember which executable is available in c:\Windows system32, because we might use it later on. There's many command line applications. The bootloader editors, file attributes, what else? ACLs for files. Check this, the file checker. cmd.exe, this one. We're inside of this process right now. This is for Windows updates. This is the console host. This is the control panel. Okay, what else? Curl. We can download anything with an application that's similar to curl in Linux or to wget. That's very important. The graphical user interface application for defragmenting a partition. Disk part for creating partition tables, formatting disks, creating partitions. Dism for installing Windows features. Else. Find str, similar to grep. GP, the GP executables, GP update for getting group policies applied to this machine. What else? ipconfig for seeing the settings of the network interface cards. ipconfig /all for seeing all of the settings. MS Info 32, really interesting. This is a totally graphical user interface application and works without any problems on Windows Server Core. The left-hand side tree works. You can expand nodes. The main menu works. The help does not work, but WinVer works correctly. And it can collect the information correctly. Where is it? These are the Windows kernel modules, the files ending with sys. Which one is running? Which one is stopped? Environment variables. the Windows services, so SCM, Service Configuration Manager, and the list of processes that are currently running. There's many services, these ones which are hosted by the executable svc host.exe. We don't see the list of processes as a tree. Details about the hardware. So really promising. We could run 3 graphical user interface applications correctly: PowerShell, cmd.exe, and MS Info 32. What else? MS Paint. Let's see this one. This exists but does not start correctly. Let's see the control panel. Again, exists but does not start correctly. The big application that's missing is MMC, so you do not get many of the MMCs like services.msc, which is the graphical user interface application for configuring Windows services, and many other such control panel applications, configuration applications. Okay. Next up, we have net for seeing the running processes and configuring remote shares. Netstat, the usual networking debug tools. So we have ipconfig/all. We have ping and trace root. This guy. And check this out. Notepad, netstat. RCP, okay. Netstat works correctly, and Notepad graphical user interface application, text editor works great. There's word wrap and everything. So we have at least notepad.exe, which allows us to do some interesting things. Let's keep it open. NSLOOKUP, again for networking troubleshooting, for troubleshooting the DNS protocol. There's ping. The remote desktop protocol server applications, RDP clip for the clipboard support. And the regedit 32. Let's see what this one is. It's a registry, the registry editor. So another graphical user interface application that's both runs correctly and is available pre-installed by default. A route for networking troubleshooting. tar. I'm not sure what this thing is, but the tar executable would be to create tarballs, which might or not be compressed. We saw trace RT. And command lines for killing and listing processes. Who am I and where? So who am I will say administrator. That's the new name of the local Windows user that I'm using. And where will say the full path of notepad. But where.exe. Because we're inside PowerShell and where is a PowerShell built-in. So for some command lines, when you're inside PowerShell, you need to specify the extension .exe. Otherwise, the PowerShell built-in will take precedence and not do what you expect. There's also right. This is also a graphical user interface application, which also does not work. Windows Update executables and xcopy for copying large file directories with many files and directories. Okay. Let's get back to Notepad. From inside Notepad, we can see the file open dialog, which is a large, very large part of the default file manager application in Windows, which is Windows File Manager, Windows File Explorer. We need to select all files for files of type, and then we can start navigating our way. Backslash Windows backslash system32. We can make the window way larger. We can sort by type. Page down works as expected. All of these files which say type application have the extension .exe. And this is the list that we saw previously in cmd.exe. This one, the list of executables in c:\windows system32. But now we can see it in a graphical user interface application. We can see the icons of each executable. And we can start each of these executable by going right click and open. Control, we know it doesn't run, etc. Defrag is a command line application. We'll be back to curl, which we need in order to download executables, MSI files, and compressed files containing installers that we're going to install on this computer. MSI info. We have MSI exec, so we can install MSI files at least silently. If we go MSI exec.exe/i, then the full path to the MSI file, and then /q/n and the correct command line. By default, if you don't provide any parameter, it will show this graphical user interface help for usage. Okay, so let's start installing some software. How do we do that? We're going to use curl in order to download the software. We're going to try first with the most important application that we want to install in here. If we want to have many graphical user interface applications running on Windows Server Core, and that's the file manager total commander. Let's create a directory where we can work. So backslash is the same thing as c:\. Backslash means go to the root of the current drive, and the current drive is c:\\. So this goes to the root of the current drive. Let's list the content. We'll create in here a directory named temp, and we can provide more than one directory. So we can also provide subdirectories, and all of the directory structures will be created automatically. Let's go like this. And we need to use curl because that's what's available in here. And the command line is curl. -L means follow all redirects, HTTP to HTTPS transitions, etc. And then the full path, and then we do not want the downloaded file to be just printed to the terminal. We want the downloaded file to be saved to a file with the exact same name as it exists in the URL. Everything worked correctly. Now in the current directory, we have the installer for Totals Commander, which we can just start. It's a graphical user interface application, of course, works correctly. Okay, next up, how do we start Total Commander? We could either start it from the command line, or we can start it from the open dialog in Notepad. Let's start it both ways. So we know it's in c:\\, program files, and it's a 64-bit application, so not with parentheses x86. The directory is Total Commander, and the executable is Total Commander 64.exe. This guy. Okay, now we have a full-featured file manager. We don't have Windows File Explorer, we have Total Commander. That's a good trade-off. Okay, so now we can navigate our way around. We can create tabs. We can connect to remote shares. When connecting using remote desktop protocol, you can specify that the home directory of the computer where the RDP client runs to be shown as a SMB share, a Windows share in here under the name //TS client. So we could have that. We can probably eject this thing, the CD-ROM. So we can do absolutely everything: create directories, create files, text editor, text viewer, everything's in here. Let's look at Windows System 32. It's in here. Sort by extension and go to letter E. The vast majority of files in here in c:\\Windows/System32 are DLLs. And the number of executables is a couple of hundreds. We could even count them. Okay. Let's count them. Trace.exe, and don't go in subdirectories. How do we say that? So it's 312 executables in the directory c:\windows /system32. Okay. At least this application we could install using its graphical user interface installer, where we just press next, next, next. Let's see if we can install more complicated applications. Let's try, for instance, a web browser. Let's try 7-zip first. For now, we do not have a web browser inside of Windows Server Core, so we need to navigate and use a web browser, fetch the correct URL that goes to the installer file of 7-zip, and then paste it in here and use curl to download. Okay, so the same dance, curl, right click with the mouse to paste. We need a -L first. Control right arrow key jumps a word to the right. Control left arrow key jumps a word to the left. -O and then the file name. I selected with the left mouse button, and then I'm pressing enter, and then right click with the mouse to paste. 7-zip is here. We can install it in graphical user interface mode, or we can install it in silent mode. The command line parameter used to be /s, and it works correctly. Let's see that the software has been installed correctly. It's in c:\program files /7-zip as we expected. There's a file manager which can be used as a regular file manager. If you don't have Total Commander and you want something a bit better than Notepad Open Dialog, this is an alternative. Okay. Using 7-zip, we can compress and extract files like this. We can extract, for instance, executables, MSI files, but also real archives such as zip files, tarballs, cab files, etc. If you extract an executable, it will show the resources that exist in that executable, such as the UAC manifest that exists in Windows executables. And the common controls Windows XP themes manifest. Okay, bitmaps, icons, etc. There's no image viewer, but there's a viewer built into Total Commander. Okay, so we managed to install 7-zip and Total Commander. How about that web browser? Let's start with the newest long-term support of Firefox. Let's first try with the MSI version installer of Mozilla Firefox. The same dance. And so our name. Let's go just firefox.msi. So this is an offline installer because it's 63 megabytes. 66, 63. We can start it straight from here, or let's see if MSIs are associated with MSI exec. So where is that? In temp, bin, and Firefox. I'll double click on the MSI, and yes, files with the extension MSI are configured to be opened by default with MSI exec.exe. But that doesn't mean the full graphical user interface installer wizard MSI will work correctly. It just starts. Let's see if it's hidden underneath here. And it's not. But maybe the application has installed correctly. So just MSI exec just displayed a bit of progress, and then that was it. Maybe that's the way the Mozilla Firefox MSI installer works like by default. I do not know. Let's see if the application starts. And yes, the application starts correctly. We cannot pin it to the taskbar though. And it's in here. We can even run in private mode. We can even configure it. Hopefully. Nope. I cannot edit the taskbar for some reason. Okay, but other than that, it should work okay. Let's see if we can uninstall this application, and then we might try to install the Mozilla Firefox, but the exe version. Or let's try Mozilla Firefox beta, if such a thing exists. Download, and we could download files without actually using curl. So that's a great progress. Let's see if we can configure other things except the taskbar. And we can. Okay. Downloads. Will the executable just start? This is a online installer, so it's a very small installer that will then download the real installer. Graphical user interface installer. The fonts are not maybe the best, but still it's really great. Doesn't say anything about being beta. So maybe I have installed Mozilla Firefox, the default one, not beta twice. Upgrade. Oh, cancel. Make the primary browser. So there's another web browser that's the primary one, which we do not know which one is. How about Mozilla Firefox Nightly. Let's try this one, Developer Edition. Has a different icon, so it should be easy to spot. Should install side by side with the default Mozilla Firefox MSI. So we're trying to install Mozilla Firefox Developer Edition. There's some hiccups here. I could get Mozilla Firefox to enter into a strange behavior. So the software probably was not tested on Windows Server Core. So you need to be really careful when you install graphical user interface software. Maybe it is good enough to allow you to install it and to use it, but then you should expect that there will be issues because nobody tests, and this is totally not a supported scenario to run graphical user interface applications in Windows Server Core 2022. So Windows Server 2022 without the desktop experience. But what I wanted to show is that there are Windows graphical user interface applications already available in pre-installed, and you can install more graphical user interface applications. You can install tens of them, and you can either download the installer using curl and then install with a silent command line, or you can download the portable versions of the software and then extract that using, for instance, 7-zip from the command line. Or you can install MSIs with full graphical user interface applications. Sometimes it will work, the full graphical user interface installer wizard. In order to uninstall software, you can use the available registry editor. You can navigate to the ARP, the Add Remove Programs registry key, which is the computer, HK local machine, software, and then if the software is 32-bit, you would go to the WoW6432 node and then go from there. So Microsoft, Windows, current version, uninstall. But I do not have any 32-bit software installed in here, so there's nothing to show. And for 64-bit software, there's HK local machine, software, Microsoft, Windows. With the right arrow key, you expand the tree view. So in order to expand at Windows, you go right arrow key. In order to collapse, you go left arrow key. So right arrow key, and then current version, right arrow key, uninstall, right arrow key. And then in here we can see 7-zip. In order to uninstall, you would use the value, the data of the value which is named uninstall string. So this thing. You just run it as is in a cmd.exe, and the cmd.exe should be elevated as administrator. In that case, it will say administrator : in the title bar. The full graphical interface uninstaller will start. Okay. You can press the F5 refresh button, which is somewhere in here in the Registry Editor main menu, View, and then refresh F5. The uninstall string for Mozilla Firefox, this one with including the double quotes. Is it here? So it complained that Firefox is already running, so I needed to close it. But it's not easy to find applications that are not minimized. The applications that are minimized will be at the bottom of the screen. The ones that are not minimized will be hidden under other applications. Okay, so we saw how we can download software either using curl, the software installers files, or we're installing a version of any web browser such as Mozilla Firefox. It could be MSI, could be an exe, or could be even a zip file containing the Windows 64-bit or 32-bit version of the web browser. And we can install software either silently or with using the specified command line for silent install, or we just double click on the exe or on the MSI and it will start in full graphical user interface installer mode. Or again, if it's a compressed archive, you just uncompress it and double click on the exe. In order to uninstall, you have regedit. This is the name of the executable, regedit32. You start it, you navigate to the add remove programs registry key, which is HK local machine software Microsoft Windows current version uninstall. You find the software in here, you go F5 to refresh. There's just one software that can be uninstalled remaining, which is Total Commander. The value inside the registry value named uninstall string, you copy the data and you execute it. So this is it. Many graphical user interface applications do run correctly, but many do not, because in Windows Server Core. So you use whatever is compatible with this operating system. And then this is if you're connecting via remote desktop protocol to the virtual machine, or maybe you've installed it on a hardware machine. But there's also the possibility of enabling the OpenSSH server that's available as a feature in Windows Server Core, and then connecting using the SSH client to this machine. And in that case, in order to download software, you would only use curl, and in order to install software, you would, for instance, download the 7-zip.exe and install it with the command line /S, and then you would download archive of the software that you want. So portable version, there's a Git portable version, a Firefox portable version, and you just extract that to the desired directory and you run the executable from there. Thank you.